When I first saw the trailer for Omen of Sorrow, I was filled with curiosity. There hasn't been a good horror-themed fighter in well over a decade now, especially with Capcom silently discarding Darkstalkers off to the side. Omen of Sorrow seems right at home in the retro revival bug that's brought out games like Shovel Knight and Gunvolt, as well as stinkers like Yooka-Laylee and Mighty No. 9. Omen unfortunately falls closer to the latter than the former because of its execution. Graphically, Omen is one hell of a ride. It uses a realistic style, which can be beneficial to a horror-themed game. Blood, rot, and other grotesque features pop way more in realism than they do in surrealism, unless you're willing to get stylized. Which I don't think this game's budget was big enough to do. Many of the models do fit though. Characters like Adam or Dr. Hyde look great and feel like the end goal everything else should have aimed for. Unfortunately, the bad examples stick out way more than the good ones. Character models like Caleb the Wolfman look like something from the later era of the Dreamcast, starkly undertextured with awkward tufts of fur that look more like chunks of flattened out plastic. The lighting is also subject to question. Character models are not illuminated by the backgrounds, instead they're lit by an unknown light source that's off to the side. This works out fine for some stages where the light isn't well defined, like in the Moonlit Chapel or a dark cobblestone road, but on a stage like the Burning Village, it's very noticeable when character models aren't flickering or shadowed by the flames in the backdrop. It makes the combatants look like paper dolls pasted on top of a diorama. It's jarring and lazy to say the least. The worst part is that the Burning Town is the first stage you see if you go through the game's story mode, so the developers were okay enough with this to be the first thing you potentially see. The story itself is also a complete mess. Writing and content aside, the presentation is laughable. The two biggest problems are constant errors in the script and lazy voiceover. There are multiple times where sitting through this that you'll hear the narrator continue to prattle on or say a line again like it was an extra take.
But the bloodluster searches for a bloodless noble in a place with no seeds, as the purveyor of darkness falls to what is dark. Falls to what is dark.
The idea of story content in an arcade fighter has always been a bit of a joke, but the way it's treated in Omen makes it feel like a complete afterthought. If the story was going to be as half-assed as this, they might as well have just not had it and instead tried to flush the arcade mode out a bit more instead. The gameplay is just as unpolished too. There are all of the important modes such as arcade training and online and local versus, but the experiences lack the polish you would see in almost any other fighter. The game's tutorial is 4 screens of text that describes its mechanics, and there's not a lesson mode or anything similar to physically show you how to play. Even after 3 to 4 hours in single player, I still don't fully understand some of the harder and more unique mechanics of the game. Characters are blatant cut and paste jobs of fighters from other games. Gabriel, the main character, has several moves similar to SNK's Rock Howard.
Counter! Counter!
And the main boss is just a copy of Hilda from Under Night In-Birth, complete with the same crouching and attack animations. I expected there to be a homage or two to Darkstalkers in here, but the sheer amount of coincidental similarities is a bit much for my liking. Maybe it's my bias from the rest of the game's shoddy presentation, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there were other examples that I missed. Even worse is that some characters just feel unfinished. One in particular has ghostly appendages and effects that come from her attacks when used, but these things have no hitbox despite looking like they should. It took me a long time to adjust to how this character plays, and even then I still couldn't find myself doing anything competent with them. The same character also doesn't seem to have any working super moves. Tried as I might, I could never get them to go off, despite me being able to do them with every other character. The most telling part was that this character wasn't even selectable outside of the story mode and is not unlockable. It's kind of mind-blowing that this game was shipped and put up on the PSN storefront in the condition it's presented in. My time with Omen of Sorrow was some of the most slog-induced grinding I've faced this year. The game looks bad, it plays bad, and it feels bad. There's a good concept here, but the end product just feels like a sham. It's a copy of another's work with a flaking coat of paint. The real nail in the coffin has to be its price point though. Asking $50 for this is a complete scam, and it has to be one of the most regrettable, non-refundable purchases I've made this year. From the lack of refinement, broken characters, stolen characters, shoddy presentation, and needlessly high price tag, it's impossible to recommend Omen of Sorrow to anyone.